Kitco News special coverage of the AIBC Summit is brought to you by Coin Payments. Crypto payments made easy.
The recent collapse of FTX, once one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world, has prompted regulators to look more deeply into the crypto space. What exactly will change in the regulatory landscape around the world? We're here to discuss this with our next guest, Joseph Borg. He is a lawyer and he is the partner of WH Partners, a law firm that specializes in technology. Welcome to the show. We are here at the AIBC Summit in Malta. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Joseph, we're going to be talking about your work in the fintech and blockchain space. But first, let's talk about what is going on in the largest headline in the world right now with FTX. Now, you're a lawyer that specializes in regulations. So let's talk about what exactly they violated here. They are currently under investigation by the U.S. Justice Department as well as the SEC, and they're under criminal investigation in the Bahamas. So let's walk through for our audience, please, what exactly they violated that prompts a criminal investigation.
Well, definitely they misused, it seems, allegedly, they misused customer funds, and that is definitely something that is criminal, because ultimately those funds were not their own funds, so they couldn't do whatever they wanted with them. And unfortunately, it is something that brings along another argument, that is the importance of proper regulation in this space. So we have tried to avoid regulation as much as possible, and a lot of talk has happened in relation to self-regulation, but now we're seeing that regulation is definitely required.
Well, let's talk about the misappropriation of client funds. Now, you're a lawyer, so you know that in a court of law, you have to be very specific here. Certainly, it was unethical, but in which jurisdiction or where does it say that an exchange cannot use client funds to trade on another platform? I mean, certainly, a bank, a traditional financial institution has a trading arm. Yes. That money comes from somewhere.
But again, it really depends on how the regulations are drafted in the jurisdiction where they are placed. So in this case, the Bahamas. But in truth, ultimately, proper regulation would not have allowed an exchange to actually use customer funds. So you mentioned banks, and yes, banks have the possibility of basically trading part of the assets of their clients. Mm-hmm. And it's done in a very regulated way with very clear limits and formulas. But still, obviously, that is one of the criticisms that the crypto industry has always had of the banking sector, right? And we're doing the same in the crypto sector. So that is what is alarming to me. But yes, going back to what breaches they have, ultimately it really depends on what the Bahamian regulations say, and if the Bahamian regulations allowed the operator to make use of those funds, then technically possibly they have not committed that breach. Mm-hmm. But for example, they would not be able to do that in Malta, for example, where the regulations would not allow them to make use, touch in any way, funds that are in their custody on behalf of clients.
Now, Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO of FTX, has been criticized for scamming people, quote unquote. Now, for somebody to scam somebody, they have to have had an intent to deceive somebody, their clients, their business partners, so on and so forth. It's one thing, and I read this in an article, it's one thing to mishandle client funds, it's one thing to lose a lot of money. That happens all the time. But, stupidity is not a criminal offense. What has he done?
Negligence is, definitely. Negligence is. And negligence is maybe true. And my personal opinion, I don't believe that this guy really wanted to just make more money for himself by doing this. But ultimately, allegedly, what he did is definitely negligent. And ultimately, that negligence is a criminal offense as well in most jurisdictions. Again, we have to see in that particular jurisdiction where he's based if there is that element, but definitely in most jurisdictions, being negligent with the funds of others can easily raise criminal issues.
Have you seen any communication either online or through their website that may indicate to you that the executives at FTX purposely deceived their clients or misled people or lied to people?
Well, I believe that Sam himself had tweeted that he was that FTX was not making use of the
Correct.
funds, and suddenly he tweeted a few days later, after what happened, that basically he effed up, in his own words.
Yeah, actually yesterday, he tweeted that, I'll read this tweet. A few weeks ago, FTX was handling roughly $10 billion a day of volume and billions of transfers, but there was too much leverage, he said, more than I realized. A run on the bank and market crash exhausted liquidity. So what can I try to do? Raise liquidity, make customers whole, and restart. So he was saying that there was too much leverage, it was a mishandling of risk from his perspective, and he's trying to fix this situation by raising liquidity. Now, you understand regulations. If you saw this tweet, would you give him more liquidity?
I believe that also in bankruptcy laws, at least in most jurisdictions, you have also a situation where you have to analyze whether your company is still viable. And the moment you realize that there is a problem with the viability of the company, you should stop trading rather than continue increasing your debts. So that is also something else that, in my opinion, I think with these tweets, he is putting his situation always in a worse position. So if I were his lawyer, I would probably tell
him
him,
to stop tweeting?
look, stop tweeting for now. Let's assess the situation slowly, and then maybe we create some form of coordinated statement. But all these tweets are not helping his position, in my opinion.
Last question on FTX, and I want to talk about regulations in Europe now. Let's say you're a client of FTX, you want to know if you're going to get your money back. The company has filed for bankruptcy. Is there any protection now for the customers?
Again, it really depends on Bahraini law, and ultimately that is also something that one has to consider when making use of these exchanges. So we know that a number of exchanges do not even tell you the jurisdiction from where they're operating. And if you go through their terms and conditions, you will just see the trade name, but you will not see which company you are dealing with. Which makes it very tough then when you have a problem. And believe me, we have clients that come to us and it's next to impossible to find the company with which they are dealing. And yes, so customers, the first thing they should do is make sure that these exchanges are regulated in a respectable jurisdiction. But also, I believe that in this case, depending on how much money, how much assets this company still has, it will depend on that, on how much these clients will manage to get back. We need to also see how many other creditors this company has. So there might be other creditors that might rank before customers. Again, this is something subject to the regulation of Bahamas, so we need to know exactly what the situation is there. In some jurisdictions, the clients would have the first claim for the client's funds. But again, that is not something that is guaranteed. We have to see the Bahraini law, what it says.
Let's talk about regulations now for cryptos and how they will evolve. I'm curious as to whether or not some of the banking laws that are in place in the West can be applied to cryptocurrencies. I'll give you one example, Joseph. In Canada, where I'm from, Canadian bank depositors are insured up to $100,000. Not to show you the law here, it's the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation applies to all financial institutions registered in Canada. If you deposit money in any Canadian bank, whether it be TD or Royal Bank, whatever, you are covered up to $100,000 in your deposits, and that is secured by the government. Can something like this happen in the crypto space? And if so, what is the regulatory steps or the legal steps that an exchange has to take with the government?
Most definitely it can happen, but is that what we want? Are we happy with the situation with banks? So why should I have 1 million in the bank and be guaranteed just 100,000?
Okay.
Isn't it my money?
Okay.
So I believe that that is something else that we have to think about here. And it's
That's a good point.
emulating the regulatory framework for banks is not good enough. This industry was created because of the shortcomings of the banking sector. So I believe that when we're regulating this industry, we have to think further and make sure that What we're unhappy with in the current banking scenario is not repeated here, because we are risking of just creating another banking industry, which we're not happy with, and that's why this industry was created.
Okay, so if you were to design, if you were working with the European Parliament, which you're doing a panel on the European Parliament later this week, how would you design a regulatory framework that in your mind is ideal for the crypto industry, such that we don't repeat the same mistakes of the traditional financial sector?
Let's not make the mistake of trying to make it sound easy. So let's face it. But yes, we have to think of scenarios that today we're unhappy with in the banking sector, and I would say that the biggest problem is that banks do not hold enough money to pay all their customers the moment customers claim back their funds. I come also from the gaming industry. All gaming companies have to definitely have enough money to pay back their customers the moment all their if today all the customers of a gaming company ask for their money back, the gaming company has the obligation of paying them back. Not even 1 cent less, right? Apart from transaction fees, of course. So I believe that is a good model to start working on. We have MiCa in Europe,
Yes.
which is the pan-European framework,
Yes.
which I think is a very good effort. I believe it's the first of its kind. I don't think there are any other regions in the world that have enacted some sort of pan-national legislation, which involves more than one country, and in this case it involves 27. So I think that's a very good effort, but I believe that we have to keep on updating it in a way that it reflects also the principles of this industry. And the principles of this industry are definitely, let's not repeat the mistakes we've done in other frameworks, which are now it's too late to fix. But let's do things properly here as well.
Okay, let's talk about MiCa a little bit, specifically how it regulates the cryptos industry. There's a number of things it bans. I'm reading right now. For example, it's the world's first set of rules that define how to ban forms of market manipulation using cryptocurrencies. I'm reading here, you would not be allowed to use CASPs. You would not be allowed to use any sort of transactions where you can front run other people. How does this affect the user of cryptocurrencies?
Look, it does affect the user in the sense that probably trading fees will have to go up a bit, because probably today most of the transactions that happen on most exchanges are these pumps and dumps. And that's why exchanges can afford to keep their fees lower because of the volume. And there won't be so much volume once they are regulated properly, because all these pumps and dumps will be out.
Do you think exchanges have a responsibility to vet the projects they list?
I'm pretty sure, yes, it's a responsibility they should endeavor in. They should also monitor what's going on on the exchange. They should be able to notice that there may be some manipulation going on. They should also be able to notice that a coin was listed there, and in truth, there's nothing behind it. There's no project behind it.
Legally speaking, let's say I go on an exchange. Doesn't matter what exchange. Let's say use FTX, for example. Okay, I go buy a scam coin on FTX. I lose all my money. Whose fault is that? Is that the project's fault? Is that FTX's fault? Who do I sue?
Well, it depends. As a lawyer, I will always tell you it depends. Obviously, that's the joke about lawyers. And it really depends in the sense that if the team behind the project has defrauded everyone by lying and providing false information and false proof of the project, then it might not be the fault of the exchange. But if the exchange just lists every coin without having any regard of what there is behind this coin, then I believe that some degree of responsibility is also on the exchange.
Okay. I want to talk about regulations in the...
One just small thing, MiCa is not just about exchanges, because that's the mistake.
course, yeah.
There are a number of service providers that were created in this industry, and MiCa regulates basically all types of crypto asset service providers, those that offer brokerage, those that offer just custodianship, those that offer exchange. So quite a lot of services are covered.
Can you give me one or two examples more of changes that will happen in the EU under MiCa?
Well, definitely the first thing is that there is going to be a harmonized framework in the sense that you get one license and that license can be used all over the EU. So in each and every country that is part of the EU, actually that is part of the EEA, so more than the EU, MiCa will apply, and once you get one license, you can operate all over the EU with that license, which gives a very strong license to those that actually obtain it. It will also provide some tangible customer protection. So today, as I said, when you're using an exchange, there are quite a few very popular exchanges that you don't even know with which company you're dealing with. Definitely now you're going to know, because only the company that has the license can actually operate in Europe.
Okay, let's talk about regulations in the metaverse now, specifically within the gaming sector. There's a lot of different metaverses we can talk about, but I know you're specialized, where background is in gaming, of course. So let's say we have a virtual casino built somewhere in the metaverse. How will the regulations around that space be different from, let's say, a physical casino?
Well, in truth, gaming laws in most countries were drafted basically in a very territorial way. So
Yes.
the moment you take customers from my territory, my laws apply. So unlike many other industries where unless you are based in my territory, my laws apply, in gaming, if you're taking customers from my territory, my laws apply. So ultimately, operators have to abide by the laws of the country from where they're taking customers. And yes, one situation that we'll see with the metaverse, which we have experienced with online gaming ultimately, is that enforcement will be taken against these operators slowly as they gain more more market share, let's say. They will be obviously targeted by authorities, and enforcement will be taken. Now, with online, it's there is the form of enforcement of blocking of websites, blocking payments. With this kind, and criminal liability, of course. With the metaverse, it's going to be much more complicated. So the challenge for regulators and for enforcement agencies will be how to enforce it. And if I were a platform, a metaverse platform, I would be really thinking hard of whether I want to keep a degree of control on the metaverse I'm creating,
Right.
or if I actually want to completely disassociate myself from what happens on the platform and say, look, I have completely no control,
Right.
and I'm making it completely decentralized. And there are arguments in favor and against, and I had these discussions also with clients over the past years of whether I want to keep control as a platform of what is developed over my platform, or if I don't want any control whatsoever, so that I don't need to intervene. So let's take Facebook, for example. Facebook was criticized a lot because it wasn't moderating what was being posted on Facebook. So you had some radical arguments being made on Facebook. You had some racial arguments being made on Facebook, and it was criticized. There were sittings in front of Congress with Mark Zuckerberg having to appear there and defend his position. And ultimately, Facebook then started taking action to moderate whatever is happening on this platform. And I believe that when the metaverse grows enough to make an impact, this will happen again on the metaverse. So law enforcement agencies, legislators, regulators will start putting pressure on these platforms. Look, you can't allow this to continue happening on your platform. And ultimately, if you don't have any degree of control, might be your best defense, but it might be also a big problem, because if you are obliged to take action and you can't take action,
What kinds of offenses would warrant law enforcement in the metaverse? I'll give you some examples in real life, okay? I think we were talking about this offline. If I go and physically assault that gentleman over there, law enforcement would take action against me. If I use my avatar online and, I don't even know how the animation will work, but punch another avatar, I mean, that's ridiculous. Did I really harm somebody?
I'm pretty sure that is very difficult to consider some form of crime.
Right.
But if I actually provide some explicit content to a minor,
Okay.
definitely there I'm committing a crime.
Well, that happened. I mean, that's a crime in real life too. I'm talking about crimes in the metaverse that may constitute.
If I do it on the metaverse,
Yes.
and provide so that will still be a crime, and it will be also a crime if I start promoting on the metaverse something that is illegal in the country.
In the country that you operate. What if I
Sexual harassment might be a situation.
What about-
Psychological harassment might be a problem as well on the metaverse.
what if I argue, and this is just me being trying to be a lawyer, what if I argue that if I sexually harass somebody on the metaverse or promote hate speech on the metaverse, I'm just using a platform to promote my thoughts. It's freedom of speech. You cannot stop me from saying the things I want on an open platform on the internet.
Yeah, definitely that would be one of the defenses that someone would try to use in front of the courts, but then it's ultimately the courts that will decide whether the law was breached. So I guess we'll be happy to see a few cases like that. I think there are a few already going on, especially in terms of sexual harassment and psychological harassment.
Cyberbullying is a crime, I believe.
So yeah, I believe that we'll see quite a few, and we'll see how the judges in different jurisdictions will deal with them.
Okay, Joseph, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for being on Kitco, and thank you for watching our show. Stay tuned for more, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Kitco News special coverage of the AIBC Summit is brought to you by Coin Payments. Crypto payments made easy.